guest in the studio, Honorable Cletus Obun. Good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thanks for having me once again.
Now, without further ado, it's no news now that the National Assembly is beginning to prepare itself to receive the 2025 budget of 47.9 trillion naira. But the challenge now is following some assumptions as captured in ways to finance the budget. Whilst the NNPC Limited is recording an improved crude oil production, many Nigerians are asking if our budget hinged partly on borrowing some humongous sums is the right approach going into the 2025 fiscal year.
Well, it's one of the economic contradictions of modern age that you are going to have a surplusage in production and go out borrowing in order to finance budgets that ordinarily should come from the improved revenue sources of our country, the customs, the immigration, in short, the non-oil sector is doing well. The tax reforms are coming up to shore up the revenue base of the country, and therefore we expect that we are having the immediate response to that,
yes,
to have borrowings. But I don't know where the story about the borrowing is coming from. Is it the speculation or is it a fact? If, for instance, before now the proposal was to borrow in order to fund the project, and now there is an increase in production, I mean, it is a two-way traffic. You can't reverse those policies that deal with the issue of borrowing to fund budget and then at the same time utilize what you have as revenue base, new revenue base. So those realities must come. That is why we say that economics is a social science. It's not an actuarial science. So you cannot be dealing with chemical reactions in a chemistry laboratory where X plus X will give you Y. You have to now engage yourself mentally, you have to engage yourself intellectually, and then use your economic indices to act on the circumstances that you meet. So I do not think that the borrowing is fixated. And Nigerians shouldn't be worried. Let me even, I keep asking the question, who on earth will give you a loan knowing very well that you are incapable of refunding? A man who can borrow is a man who has capacity to refund. Nobody just does it to punish you. If it is to suffocate you, as the Brentwood Industries used to do, and recommend for us and say IMF conditionalities, for us to borrow you money, you must do X, Y, Z, you must deregulate this, you must allow free market forces to operate here, and clearly you can see they have never done so in any of their own countries, but now recommended for third world countries as a way of asphyxiating the growth and economic development of the people, and especially the living standard, in order to exacerbate and generate crisis, because one leads to the other. Economic suffocation leads to social asphyxiation, and that leads also to turbulence, which is the consequences of deprivation, suppression and subjugation of rights, of individual liberties, and of course economic liberties, as well as social well-being of the communities and the people. Once those things are stifled, what you get is a reaction. That reaction is direct and opposite, which is riots, which is demonstrations, which is unrest, which in early times used to be coups and counter coups. Those are the kind of things, and then they start putting it down to tribalism, start putting it back to religious biases. They are not. They are only symptomatic of economic and social upheavals and distortions.
Well, Honorable Obun, you mentioned earlier that who in their right senses, or what country in their right senses would want to loan out money to another country that they know is incapable of refunding. But the narrative out there most times, especially amongst Nigerians, is that the government continues to borrow these monies from the places that they borrow the monies, either the IMF, the Paris Club, or even from China, for some sort of exchange of something within the country. Like we see the relationship, business ties between Nigeria and China, where Nigeria borrows monies from China, and then China takes up a certain portion of investments or assets within the country. That is the notion out there. Is that correct, or what is the situation like?
Yeah,
do you care to throw more light on that?
Yeah, let me say this to you. You are talking about crude for
oil-backed loans.
Yes. This is what has happened right from the Babangida days. People are just noticing it now. Abuja was built on that basis. Crude in exchange for infrastructure.
Yes.
Do this road, how much is it? Crude oil, how many barrels of crude oil equal to this? And all that. I'm just trying to break it down to brass tacks. I don't like us coming in social or public and regular media like this to keep talking terminologies to people who barely understand it. As enlightened as well, there are certain new terms that have come in that needs to be broken down for people to understand and appreciate. Is this lack of communication?
On whose part?
On the part of first information managers of government. And of course, the media, which owes a responsibility to inform and educate. It's not only just to pass information. Government said we are going to do crude for this exchange. Break it down and tell them that it is modern day primitive trade by barter. That is primitive trade by barter that we are practicing today with new terminologies. You are saying that I will give you oil, come and do 5 kilometers of road. It is 10 barrels of oil, which is $5. So with $20, you can do 5 kilometers of road. So come and take it. That is what they are talking about. And people are busy using sophisticated language and getting into sophistry to engage the public. And then the public now reacts and say, we don't understand what you're talking about. So break it down for everybody to understand that they want to exchange oil for infrastructure. That the money they are collecting, they are not even going to pay back as money. They're going to pay back. That is why
they are going to pay back
with crude oil.
The crude oil, yes.
So we are doing Lagos Ibadan Express. It will cost us 12 billion. It will take us 1.2 million barrels of oil to generate 12 billion. Therefore, in the next 5 years that will produce the 1.5, we'll be giving you the oil. That is what they've been trying to do and all along. And this is what most of our analysts say, look, it is unbecoming of us to continue to engage and indulge ourselves with that level of primitivity and crudity in dealing with it. And that is why this president now wants to get back into better means of funding Nigeria's economy without introducing us to advanced indebtedness.
And what means is that?
One, you see the tax reforms. Some people are staying in this country who have never paid tax. People are owning estate in this Abuja and they've not paid one dime into the nation's account. NNPC generates funds that it never gives into the federation account. You have customs before today, before Ali came in,
yes,
in the last regime. Custom barely returns anything in any year, but in 2-3 months you start hearing about billions.
We saw here a report that the customs has announced a revenue collection of 5.7 trillion naira as of November 12th, 2024. Now, with all of these monies, do you still think there is need for this large borrowing to be taking place in a country like Nigeria?
I want us to be very specific about the borrowings. Is there presently, apart from is it 21 billion or so that they are talking about dollars,
yes,
that they want to fund our foreign transactions and all that? And that is all that I am hearing presently. And if you have an estimated improvement in oil production, which also means increase in oil money coming in, beyond, you've just named customs now,
yes,
there are others coming up. If the man now anticipates with this are foreign exchange earnings and this anticipation, and presently we need, there are things that you stay outside government and you don't know, and even at home you do it at a domestic level. Let me give you this. Under Buhari, we needed Tucano jets. It takes 2 years or 8 months or 9 months, depending on what you want, to produce one Tucano jet. At the time of production, the price would have increased. So, for instance, a Tucano jet is 200 million naira.
Yes.
It will take 8 months, and insurgency was biting, and we needed a Tucano jet in 3 months. And it will take 2 months to produce a Tucano jet. But in that 2 months' time, if they do it and keep for you, you'll buy it for 350 million. But if you pay today,
in like 8 months, you can get it for 200.
200. So why will you not cut costs by going out of your way to ensure that you save the country that money that you are going to spend? And two, the urgency of the insurgency is real and practical. So in the national interest, you go out of your way to do that. The ordinary person will tell you that, you don't anticipate that your wife will go to labor and will need a CS. And then she gets to the hospital and the doctor says, look, for us to even start, you have to donate blood or you buy these pants we have. You didn't go there for that purpose. You went there, my wife is going to have safe delivery. even if you anticipated it and you say, worst case scenario, I'll need 2 pounds of land, you now go there and say it is 4 pounds. What do you do as a man? You allow your wife to lie there, and when you go to borrow, people will say how careless you are, and your wife is physically dying there on the hospital bed. This is what Nigeria is. Put Nigeria down, but because we don't have that sense of patriotism and urgency, we don't have that connection with our country to know that at certain points you need to do certain things. This is the courage this president has, which most people do not have. By the way, let me again congratulate him for having the courage to bring on board my friend Daniel Boala, who was becoming, whom we needed somebody of that nature to be in that position at this time of our country, so that these communication matters will be cut off from us. So I want to thank the president again for that bold step, because every other president will shy away from it because of the criticism that will trail him and say, this was your opponent during your elections, how do you bring him back? But people forget that there has been a relationship during the primaries that brought us here. So if you have a reliable ally, why do you want to throw him under the bus on account of national expediency and political comfort?
Now, Honorable, you mentioned something very crucial in communicating Nigeria's true position in the simplest of terms that every Nigerian can relate. Now, this morning, just before I ask my next questions, let's reference one of the newspapers, The Vanguard, which I believe put it out in the simplest terms and also captures concerns from economic experts on some of the assumptions of the budget, which it says is high-fetched. Now, and as the Vanguard newspaper greets your screen, we'll look at the strap lines beneath the headline. Now, on the Vanguard earlier this morning, we saw the headline 2025 budget, FEC okays 47.9 trillion naira, FG to borrow 13.8 trillion naira. Now, the strap lines read, budget assumptions, exchange rate 1,400 naira per dollar, oil benchmark price $75, and then oil production 2.06 billion barrels per day. Experts fault assumptions, describe budget as ambitious. Now, the last strap line, they says, IMF report, Nigeria absent in good news, included in bad news. Those two strap lines hinged on where our exchange rate now is and the global price of crude, formerly at $90 per barrel, projected to be $75 per barrel going into 2025. Now, these assumptions, experts are calling too ambitious, also citing the IMF report saying we're missing from the good news and included in the bad news. Do you think that there should be some sort of caution whilst we remain ambitious about how productive 2025 is based on our crude oil?
Now you are going to be basing your projections on return on turnover. So what that means, return on turnover, what that means is that if it was 90 naira and we are producing $100, 100 barrels per day, that means 90 times 100, 900,000 naira.
Yes.
If then we are going to bring it to 75 and we are going to produce $200, that means you are even expecting more money than you would have gotten at 90 naira for 100. This is exactly the production. So, for a president that is an oil expert himself, that comes from that industry, for a man like Kodoso in the central bank, for a man like this Edu Wale in finance, you have a studied economic team that is not afraid to take decisions and be ambitious. And I do not know when ambition became a crime, especially when it is not vaulting and based on facts available. All of us have agreed that oil production is going to increase. All of us have agreed that prices are going to reduce. So on the basis of more production and less price, you are going to make up for that less price with a quantum of oil you are going to produce. If that happens, and you still insist that a dollar is going to go, dollarization of our economy is sufficient hypocrisy, false alarm, and completely out of our purview. We know countries that are not dollar-based. They don't base their economy on the dollar. Because if Dangote is now going to naira, if we permit the coinage, our petroleum refineries, our refinery, our oil production and refining, then we have no business discussing.
In the crude for naira deal.
Yes. We do not have any business getting panicky
about the exchange
rate. But even at that, the president includes it and said, let's take, there is no harm in surplusage. let us even take it that we're going to dollarize our economy. Even at that, this is what we can do. And I think that ambition is well-founded on concrete facts and realities, verifiable under the circumstances we find ourselves. So I do not think that
it's too bad to be too ambitious.
Yes, in any case, these are our experts from Western financial institutions must stop engaging in this anti-intellectual and pseudo-intellectual analysis of our economy all the time on the basis of what the West tells us. Our reality is completely far away from the Western reality.
As captured in the IMF report.
The IMF report is always intended to raise alarm and gaslight third world economies. I believe that, and I have evidence to show so all along. When they told us if we don't collect the IMF loan and if we don't accept their conditionalities, Nigeria was going to break down in 1985, and students rioted in 1989 under the Babangida regime. Nigeria did not go down. On the contrary, we did well and got Abuja to where it is today. What we got to as Abuja today was between 1995 and 1998. 3 years is what you saw as Abuja. The Babangida years in Lagos transforming into Abuja. Between 1999 and today, Nigeria has added less than 10% of what we know as infrastructure in Abuja. So, if we didn't accept the IMF condition because students in Nigeria rioted, remember the role of Nigerian students and the unions in the shaping of Nigeria's history and destiny. This is why we must allow struggles of this nature, especially of the internal intellectual bent, to take root in our country in order to sustain our economies and sustain our people and our nationhood. We can advance faster and better. Because each time you hear IMF said, we start sniffing, we start panicking, we start getting sweaty about it.
Whilst I agree with you that we shouldn't listen to the Western institutions, we now have, in our second point of the news this morning, a home institution, the Apex Bank in Nigeria, the CBN, has raised an alarm. They are also raising the alarm on sex in what they call the absolute power to regulate public companies. CBN is saying that should the National Assembly allow for such powers, Nigeria is headed for trouble. Do you see any reason for this alarm, and do you believe that giving absolute powers to SEC to regulate public companies, much like the NNPCL, we might be having these issues of non-remittance going into 2025?
Let me say this, public limited companies are supposed, the regulation, the regulator should be regulated by the shareholder. The shareholders are you and I. Regulating the regulator is a factor that we have been missing in public enterprise dealings in Nigeria. So SEC is only a subset of the monitoring agencies. No greater agency can. When we say civil society organizations, SERAP and all this, Nigerian, what do you call them? The Civil Liberties Organization, CLO,
yes,
and all that. These are old, very founded. What is their function? They are the ones that should go under. We have investigative journalists, economic journalists, and others
who can look into the
activities of these people and say this is where they are going on. It is because we absolutely surrender. The first regulator is a citizen who only brought SEC and its agents and officials as their own representatives.
Honorable, but don't you think this surrender is rather stemming up from the lack of knowledge or the technical know-how to go about investigating or finding things about some of these regulators who are regulating other companies? And how can we simplify it for the common man to understand that this is the role they are supposed to play to checkmate these agencies?
Again, I have told you, society is run on a two-way traffic, action and reaction, comment and response. As long as one end of the communication is cut off,
yes,
you are going to stifle society. And nothing frees a society than free speech, which is what we are enjoying almost unfettered, in spite of what people might say today. I don't know what other liberty they want in Nigeria in terms of press freedom. I know what censorship did to South Africa, and I know what these freedom fighters did to go under people like Albert Lutuli, people like Steve Biko, people like Ezekiel Mfalele, and the rest of them. You will definitely know the role and the power of resilience. So I do not think that we are frustrated in Nigeria in an age of science and ICT. for us to, when you can even stay here and get information anywhere by just a mere touch of AI. You may not have accuracy, but you will have an idea, general idea of what to do, and it can lead you to proceed on your investigation. We have young students who are graduating from the universities as coppers. Earlier in 1990, I had written a piece in Champion newspapers in which I advocated that coppers should be taught how to use small arms. It was my encounter with cultists on campus that led me into making that proposal that coppers should be taught how to use small arms. I didn't in any way anticipate what I was anticipating, that in cases of riots, a copper around the place should be mobilized immediately as a paramilitary force, as a volunteer into the military forces, the kind of thing you have in the garrison states like Israel, where every young man at 21 already automatically is trained as a military officer, can use any form of arm depending on where you are, the Air Force. But in Nigeria, I wanted the youth service to be used for that purpose. Even if you can't take all the coppers, take some of them who can volunteer, so that in serious cases of riot, you quickly recruit them into the army, rather than bringing Boko Haram agents to be recruiting them into the army and saying that you are trying to convert them or rehabilitate them.
You are suggesting that instead of the compulsory NYSC scheme, the NYSC scheme, it should have been some sort of military training.
And
enlistment into the military.
From.
Calls have been made of such actions to be taken in recent times. However, the youth themselves have been the ones kicking back against this, citing that perhaps the government of the day just wants to enlist them and use them as sacrificial lambs in the fight against insurgency and insecurity in the country. That
is grossly unfounded, grossly false, because I know that as we speak, each time you call for recruitment, Nigerian soldiers are looking for 10,000. They get less than 1,000 people. And you get more than that amount. They are looking for 1,000, you get 10,000.
Yes.
They are looking for 1,000 soldiers, they get 10,000 people applying. Now go online and find that. You go to the military schools, Nigerian youths are flooding there. Nigerians are patriots. You need to be on the streets. This alarm about Nigeria's open, the young people are ready to sacrifice for this country, but they just need the opportunity to do so. They need a platform to do so. But one of the things we are not doing well is the orientation. The orientation that you can even employ from youth service, you can be an employer of labor, rather than looking for employment.
Yes.
Because there's so much to do. I ask you in Abuja here, look at the kind of weather condition I have. The harmattan is setting in, but everywhere is so hot because the green is going off. So if you carry volunteer groups here to do no other thing than to do a forestation program in Abuja, you know what that means? A massive employment outlet. You don't need to employ by government to do that. There are several agencies all over the world looking on this climate change matter. Funds are lying there, waiting for people to utilize them. We can just talk about the 100 billion for youth in Abuja. Bring us a proposal of what you want to do. We are not getting that. Instead of getting people enlightened about this, informed about this, flyers on the street in buses, how to attend church services, when jobs are ready, come and do them. In any case, what's the workforce of the day? We are over 200 workforce of the day. How many people can the local government, the state government, the federal government, the military forces, the paramilitary forces? How many of them can? We can't employ 10 million. We don't have the 10 million workers in Nigeria. Take from the local government and start everybody. We don't have the 10 million out of so you can't employ by government. So instead, it is the informal sector. The woman selling a caramel needs to get to pound it for her. The person selling a restaurant in Buka is looking for people to wash things and now want to cook and now want to do that. That is labor already done. The change is endless. You do not, this I need to encourage, this I need to deal with. And it will not be in Abuja. Power everywhere. You will not make everybody to come to you. You come to Calabar, you come to Bissau, you come to Calabar. Electricity. You can do all those things. You can do about this. You can do all those things. People make their hair and all that. Students these days, I call my daughter. Students go and learn it. Just go and learn it. And so that when you are in school, you don't have to depend on me. So that when you want to do their hair, go and do their hair for them. Their friends will do manicure. Go and learn how to do that and use your hands. Get your own from your hands for what you get to supply. So to that extent, I say to you, that we need more information to the party, more encouragement, and more objectives. And the government also is putting out so much funds, especially the government. It's putting out so much funds that we will need to have that people regulate this funds. For example, they are going to try to revise the school feeding system. It's going to change that will come out from there. I ask you, the food that are wasted in Benue State, just do, we go and buy bobo from supermarkets imported from China.
Welcome.
What is bobo? We are doing mango fruit, we are doing fafala, we are doing chibita. What's that? Those are fruits that are lying here in Benue. You go on the road and see oranges run over there. Mango will soon come, it's waste like that. No one single factory in any local government in Benue, the food basket of Nigeria.
Now that brings us to agricultural value chain addition. Whilst we have this, what I call the natural resources,
Niger Delta is the lifeblood of Nigeria's economy.
We have little value addition here in Nigeria. To a point where we're jettisoning our agricultural potential and the reliance is on this oils. We won't see a headline that says Nigeria's 2025 budget agri to 2025 twice
for environment. Call this place home. This is the Niger Delta, a land of contrast, a story of resilience, a journey of hope. Don't miss our exclusive series, Niger Delta Today, every day at 12 only on ADBN TV. Witness the untold stories, experience the journey, be part of the change.
Meets opportunity, where ideas become
theoretical aspects of learning rather than practicalizing it in real life. I know that there are practicals that take place in schools and all, but why don't this knowledge that students acquire in schools go beyond the four walls of the universities when they step out of them?
That's what I said. I laid the foundation here by telling you that our educational system is not productive, it's not tailored for production. Why will a young journalist, why will a young engineer, a mechanical engineer in Nigeria, we have professors of mechanical engineering in Nigeria, yes, but their cars are repaired by primary 6 people on the roadside.
Who went to technical schools.
Who never went to any school.
They
just walked into a workshop and they say, I'm an apprentice. That's all they have done. 90% of your mechanics say, and never stepped onto any school. The highest they have gone is a primary school. Those who are lucky go to secondary school. Otherwise, the rest of them never step into any 4 walls or any school.
Yet they're the best hands at the job.
They are the ones that the professors of mechanical engineering go to fix their cars. They are the ones that our graduates of engineering working in works department, Federal Ministry of Works. They are when they want to build a house, this house, go there and ask those people who are building a place. The person who is an engineer who read engineering is the one standing with a cap and looking at the mason man, putting the blocks together and plastering and choking the entire place. Those who do that never went to any school. They are here building for you. Go out there and find out those who are doing the actual work and laying the blocks. Please ask them which school they attended. None of them has OND. Yet we have OND civil engineers, OND building engineers. So this is the paradox of our educational system, which we must redirect, because the essence of the 6334 system was to practicalize that you don't need to be a graduate. Most of the best hands we have in this country that do are from Togo, Chad, and these francophone countries who did the 6443 system perfectly. So you can stop in JS3 and you discover that you're a good plumber. That gives you a living for the rest of your life. Yes. Because every day people are building.
Because we have subjects like introduction to technology at that level.
You have it there. So they are taught this, and they were laboratories built for that purpose. There are workshops built for that purpose, for practicals. They have all been turned into homes for lizards and other reptiles.
Now, time is fast spent, and we have little less than 10 minutes to wrap up this conversation. Let's go to another pressing issue in the news. Ahead of tomorrow's election in Ondo State, there have been counter-accusations thrown across the floor. Now, the PDP is citing that the APC is making light of the peace accord that was signed. Yiaga Africa is calling on INEC as this will be another litmus test in an off-cycle election. But so far, so good, beyond the calls for the redeployment of the current resident electoral commissioner in Ondo State. Do you have any challenges with the way the election build-up is unfolding?
No. When you say it is at 64, America is 240 years a democracy. We are 64 and we have started practicing. We are doing better than America in inclusiveness, in the tolerance of non-indigents, in tolerance of women. America said that by not allowing women to vote. America said by not allowing blacks on account of skin color not to vote. Yes. If you look at the Renaissance, Harlem Renaissance, if you look at the civil rights groups and the civil rights organizations and the period of what led to the Civil War and all that, the period of slavery and all that, yet it is black sweat that built the Americans and the America today. Now, yet, when we talk about Britain, only recently did they tolerate that non-indigenous and even blacks can take certain positions. It's only a recent development after more than 150 years of democracy. So you cannot, yet at 64, see what we have done with our country. See what we have done with our country, with our women and with non-indigenous from certain areas. We are tolerating that we are more inclusive. I think Nigeria has greater hope, greater potential for becoming an example of a great democracy and a great nation in the Committee of Nations. As contradicted by the fact that most of our people keep talking down on Nigeria and giving us names. Nigeria, if you take a blow-by-blow account of our progression as a nation, we have done extremely well.
Well, Honorable Obun, not to digress too much, in closing, in just a few words, what do you think or what do you see ahead of the Ondo gubernatorial polls come tomorrow?
No. Ayede Tiwa has already demonstrated that he's a sitting governor and that he takes everybody along. So it is not about the APC, it's not about it. In the name of Ajase, in the name of Akeredolu, the Ondo people have seen that this man studied under Akeredolu, who passed on. So he's carrying on to conclude what the man has started. If they were more than to them, what the debt has done to the people of Ondo State is to give to them a 16-year unbroken tenure that will keep the vision of the former NBA president, now late, who has brought out a protege whose ideas and vision shall be implanted among the Ondo people. For me, it is the right thing to do for the Ondo people, and it is the right thing for them to do at a time like this in their history. So APC has it waiting for them to take. It is only for them to misbehave, and I think there is the very unlikely possibility of any other party winning in that state, because the infighting, each time APC loses an election, if you watch, it is APC that is fighting APC. It happened to us in 2020 in Ondo State. It happened to us almost happened to us in Kogi State and all that. So each time we are losing, it is APC against APC. Never that an opposition party, because it's an organic whole. It is almost unbreakable because the foundations of it were not founded on sentiments and emotions.
Honorable Cletus Obun, I must thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you in the studio, and your words are always punchy as usual.
Thank you so much, and may God bless Nigeria. And let me close on the sad note that the former president of Senate, Dr. Joseph Wayas, will be buried on the 30th, with the funeral ceremonies beginning in Abuja on the 28th. May his soul rest in peace, and may the South, and indeed Nigeria, pray for the soul of a quintessential nationalist, Dr. Joseph Wayas.
Thank you very much.
Well, this is as much as time will permit for us as we wrap up on this side of discussion. And officially, campaigns have ended ahead of tomorrow's polls. In the words of Honorable Cletus Obun, he is quite confident in INEC's capabilities to handle off-cycle elections, and he also feels that the parties at play should allow the Ondo people elect their leaders. Well, we'll take a break, and when we return, Chijioke would walk us through the headline stories on the foreign scene before we look at other perspectives ahead of tomorrow's election, especially for persons living with disability, and some of the security concerns in how to reach local government areas amongst the 18 local government areas of Ondo State come tomorrow. Stay with us. Now, all eyes on Ondo State tomorrow, Saturday, 16th November, as the electorates would look to cast their votes. And it's the atmosphere ahead of what many are calling quite the keenly contested election in 18 local government areas. We now hear that election materials have been deployed, and whilst election observation groups are also on ground to assess the level of preparedness on the part of the electoral umpire, would also be looking to dialogue with them on the program this morning in ensuring accountability in the 2024 Ondo Guber polls. Our guest on the show is Safi Abichi, who is the head Knowledge Management and Learning Department of Yiaga Africa, who would join us from Ondo State this morning. Let's see if we have that connection steady and available whilst we also begin our conversations in the studio as well. Hello, Safia. Good morning to you. Can you hear us?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you join the program. Whilst the guests in the studio are also looking forward to get the feedback in terms of the audio, let me ask you the question of how prepared do you think INEC is following what you observed on ground?
Based on INEC's items or list of INEC's timetable for
I was still
Ondo
trying to
State.
make some sense of what she's saying as we're yet to get feedback on this end.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but for the purpose of those in the studio with me as well, to be able to hear you. Carry on.
Okay, thank you so much. I will say that based on INEC's activities for the Edo elections, looking at the timetable, what they've checked on the timetable, we can fully say that INEC is ready to deploy tomorrow. All things has been based on INEC, just as INEC stated, have been successfully implemented. Last week, INEC had a mock test of the accreditation processes for the elections. Thankfully, we were there to observe it. I personally was in 2 centers where it was done in 2 different senatorial districts, and based on reports from INEC, the exercise was carried successfully, and we believe that by tomorrow the election should run swiftly. And remember that INEC yesterday, last week at the stakeholders meeting, promised that Ondo will be better than Edo, and we're going to hold them accountable to their words tomorrow.
Well, when you say Edo will be better than Ondo,
I was going to come to that because we saw the situation in Edo. Of course, the APC won, but however, other political parties decried the elections being fair, free, and credible, citing that it was hijacked by powers at the very top due to the affiliation of Senator Monday Okwebolo to the APC. And now, yet again, we are seeing a hugely contested election between the APC and the PDP, as well as other political parties, but these are the 2 contenders. And PDP has been blowing hot, raising concerns that perhaps the APC just wants to hijack Ondo just as much as it did with Edo. Are these speculations true over there?
Yeah, they're exactly right. They are part of the issues that, based on our assessment of the pre-election environment, that we felt like it has dominated the elections. The accusation of rigging and plans for rigging in the upcoming elections has been coming from both sides. Specifically, it was not just coming from one side. Apart from that, there were the election campaign, as you might know, has not been about issues, but about personalities and the accusations and counter accusations and some level of hate speech that we've seen thus far. Um, but the Electoral Commission is not a political party and is a public institution, and we believe that they're supposed to learn lessons from Edo State. We've also had speculation around new forms of rigging. I don't know that forms of rigging, but we have to see if it will work and if it will happen tomorrow, and if it happens, whether it will be successful. That's the question you should be asking. Of course, political parties will always make attempts to subvert the process, but it's left for INEC and other institutions that are part of the election administration to ensure that this they do not succeed.
Well, Safia, one of the things that has always been on the lips of people who talk about the Ondo or the build-up to the Ondo gubernatorial polls is the lack of voter participation or the voter apathy that has, sort of swept through the state. Is that the situation there? Are people rather a little bit apathetic to the idea of going to the polls to exercise their civil franchise come Saturday? What is the situation like?
Yeah, I can confirm to you that I have been in Edo State or Ondo State uh, in the last two governorship elections. In fact, I've been in the pre-election environment for both elections and even this one. And I can also confirm to you that looking at my experience and drawing from my experience in studying elections in this state, uh, the pre-election environment is relatively calm. When I say calm, not in terms of violence, but in terms of citizens' enthusiasm to participate in the process. But I know that this week, even myself, I was on radio stations and TV trying to encourage citizens to go out and exercise their franchise. Because the truth is that it's those that turn out to vote that decide the winner of the election. So we are encouraging citizens to turn out and vote. And a lot of feedbacks we've gotten from people are varying from economic challenges to also political apathy. And here we're seeing the correlation between economic challenges, the economic recession that's hitting not just Nigeria but the entire world, with voter apathy. But but there are speculations on whether people are maybe because people are just coming out from an election in 20 that was last year, general elections. But we've seen them come out from general elections in 2016, and we've also seen them come out from general elections in 2020. But what could be the difference? And there were conversations on whether the candidates are popular or not. And of course, you know that we do not have independent candidates in the country. So it is what the political parties dishes out that that we go out to decide on who wins at the end of the day. But if it is about apathy, we've seen some level of apathy, and we're already seeing citizens interested in being induced by politicians. You hear conversations of how much are people are you bringing? What are you saying? You're talking. You need to like somebody interpreted in Akure language that they're saying that, oh, you're talking after you're speaking too much English. Please do and give us what belongs to us. But these are the challenges, and I think it is a wave that we might have to sit and look into after these elections before we step into other elections next year, specifically the FCT local government elections, that's the area council elections, as well as the Anambra elections that is coming around this time next year.
Now, let's come back to our guest in the studio who also haven't listened to you, I know, based on his political affiliation as well, especially when you made mention of reference to the Edo elections, kind of raised an eyebrow. Honorable Cletus Obun is here with us in the studio, and having also listened to some comments from the PDP in regards to the conclusion of the Edo election, they were citing some of the terminologies used by the APC, saying the template used in Edo would be replicated in Ondo. And it's largely a vague terminology, but they feel aggrieved by that usage of the word template, which they believe is largely unfair to the voting population in Edo. Do you see any reasons why comments from Safia would also capture some of these concerns going into tomorrow's election?
Well, on a general note in Nigeria, each time I have to run comments on this, I first distinguish between partisan political affiliations and interests and nation building and building an electoral process that will be credible. I have sat in opposition for more than 20 years. So I know how it feels when you are rigged out and when you are suppressed. But I can tell you from this position that over time there had been incremental progress made on a positive side from INEC, from voters, and from political parties. It is participants. When you say political parties, there is no clean political party that has no infiltration from one to the other. Some people's political migration is so volatile.
In what way?
That is movement from one party to the other.
Very easy for them.
It's so easy that their reverse gear is so flexible. So when you start talking about APC, PDP, it's as if there are some stringent Democrats and Republicans here. What you find people like us try to replicate here is that, look, on this matter about my party, I do not agree with them. Yeah. That will not make me leave the party. I have never done that. I sat in opposition as leader in Cross River State for the past 22 years. And I have never shifted to one political party on account of disagreements in my party. I should be one of the first people to be moving in and out of parties because the subjugation and suppression have been so terrific on my part that even the reward system is such that I should even be weeping about. But it has never moved me. What's the reason? I believe, like I did until 2015, that this PDP we shall see them no more. I kept saying that to everybody, and that they are vagabonds in power. I said so at the time, that they will soon go because they have in them planted the seeds of self-destruction, implosion. But in Ondo State and Edo State, what we saw there is simply self-destructiveness. They carried in them, was it Labour Party? They were in tatters. Who is the national chairman? Who is the national secretary? You saw that even in their campaigns, this one come and say I'm the national secretary, this one come and say I'm the state secretary, this one come and say the state chairman. That was what Labour was doing. Then you now move to PDP. People like Danobi, who produced Obaseki, virtually produced him when APC was in tatters in 2020. We are all away, couldn't even attend the campaigns for PDP. So were you expecting under that condition, under that fractured condition and relationships, were you expecting PDP to put up any fight? So when you inflict that upon yourself and start looking for who to blame, that is not statesmanship. That is not the truth. That is not democracy. That is not partisan politics. So I expect that they should admit that no party, the two mainstream parties, PDP and Labour Party, were not in a condition to win any election. If they had won that election, you should even question themselves, because I've seen somebody win an election and reject the results. In Ofa, the councillor of ACN was winning the election and the PDP candidate was given the result and called for swearing in and given a certificate. He rejected it and said he did not win. In Ofa, Kwara State, 2011.
That's integrity.
Yes, that's integrity. We want to see that happen, and we say it doesn't happen in Nigeria. It does happen.
Honorable Cletus, I will come back to you and get more takes on the PDP issue, seeing that they are already gearing up ahead of 2027, and it appears that they want to give APC a run for their money, a party that you are actively a part of. But let's go back to Safia and have another take. Safia, if you can hear me, what is the security situation like in Ondo State? Considering the fact that most elections are usually marred by election violence, thuggery, ballot snatching and the likes, is security beefed up enough to ensure the seamless flow of voting activities tomorrow?
Yeah, at the moment, it seems like it's beefed up enough, and we've also seen their response level in the pre-election environment. If you remember the clash in Idanre and Ifedore specifically, how they swept in, even though it was a traditional clash, but we know that it's an election cycle and it could spill over to elections. And we saw how it was handled swiftly, and we could say that with short examples, the security agencies are on top of their game. But the problem is usually not how beefed up they are, is the professionalism, because election policing is different from normal day policing, which requires some level of civil engagement. And we can say that over the years, there have been a significant progress by the security agencies, even in the Edo, where we're complaining of. But one of the gaps or one of the the revelations we've gotten in recent time is the fact that security agencies are either not taking actions when vote buying is happening at polling units. We know that vote buying is an electoral offense, and we believe that security agencies can take actions. And in some cases, the accusation of them enabling and aiding that process to happen swiftly. So these are the concerns now. In as much as we're encouraging them to continue to be in their professionalism on election day. And we've also had situations, even in the last elections, where those that are on highways were acting unprofessionally in the elections. But from our engagement with direct engagement with the security agencies, that's the police command here, and even the uh, the the NCDC, and there's been promises of them. Ensuring that their officers and men act more professionally. But we must keep an eye on them, especially when it comes to vote buying, because vote buying is becoming a norm in our electoral system, and we hope that this should not be aided and not be condoned even by security agencies.
Now, Safi, having listened to you, a lot of persons will argue that in the last elections and even recently in Ondo State, we saw news reports that the EFCC in particular monitored the results, and for incidences where vote buying was alleged, some arrests were made, but on the level of prosecutions or outcomes, little has been reported on that. Care to make any comments in that regard?
Yeah, for me, it's even beyond the level of arrest. The question is how significant is the level of arrest in relation to the magnitude at which it happened. We know that just about 4 years ago, EFCC started stepping in to address this issue. But I personally do not understand their rules of engagement when it comes to policing. I'm sorry to use that word, but I don't. But policing the elections as it regards to financial crime. But like I said, the question is their intervention really working to forestall that?
I will interrupt you a bit. Let me say this. When you get into this near perfectionist thing, you must differentiate between vote buying and party agencies and personages. Only recently, we saw on internet videos of Trump sending food items and going to grocery shop to buy things and send to people in their homes. Yeah. In Nigeria, there will be such an Trump
constitute inducement.
Precisely. Is that inducement? I ask you, are you coming to introduce hunger to the land? Is it because it's happening on election period, on election season? In any case, if you want to persuade even a woman to marry her, do you introduce poverty as your virtue? So if you want somebody to vote for you, do you come to him during the campaigns and tell him, don't worry, when I come I'll be so prudent that even if you are supposed to take 2 loaves of bread, you eat one. Instead of you to use a bus to work, we will introduce keke. Is that what you are going to be telling your work? So on election day, for us political actors, you must first of all feed your agents before another person will feed them. Because while they are standing there on the queue, sometimes election materials on account of roads arrive late and people are waiting there almost the entire day. If you bring pure water, you say you are buying votes. If you say, look, I didn't bring pure water, they are selling it there. Take this 500 and go and buy. He said no.
Safia, is that
you say it is not true. Then at another level, yes, there are conscious efforts to also pay people. If you want to select your agents, that is one of the things we train our agents to do. You know, when we are in opposition, what we do is to insist that
I haven't listened to Honorable Obun's concerns on how to draw the line between inducements and welfare for electorates, who people would say it's different to divide who is going to vote who, and how do you give out some of the welfare materials, much like Honorable is making a case for. What's your perspective on this debate?
Yeah, so I think Honorable I don't know if Honorable has gotten the news that the voter inducement is not at that level. It's beyond the level at which you're talking. And when you talk about your party agents, I personally have trained party agents of 5 political parties in the Edo elections, including APC, PDP, and Labour Party. And we're not saying that you should not take the welfare of your party agents into concern. It's different when you negotiate for votes with voters at the polling unit. When voters, you're saying, oh, I'll give you 10,000. Oh, no, I'll collect 20,000. You vote, you snap and show proof of who you voted for. That's a serious transaction. And our electoral law does not does not approve that. It's different from saying, oh, I'm promising you this, or you're giving welfare materials, which it depends on how the welfare materials are being distributed. If you're a philanthropist, why are you just doing it on election day? If you're a philanthropist, why are you doing it close to the elections? But what we're saying is that voter inducement has gone beyond distribution of materials to canvassing and negotiating for votes at the polling unit, which is not which is an offense in our electoral.
But Safia, the elections that have not have not held yet, and we are looking at it coming up tomorrow. All of these allegations that you are now leveling against political parties, especially parties like the one Honorable belongs to, ahead of the elections. Are we seeing them doing the same thing, going and canvassing for votes with monetary items or other items? No. For people who are standing in queue to exercise their civil franchise.
Okay, so let me respond to this in two folds. First of all, we learned lessons from previous elections. We're just coming from Edo elections, and that was why I was saying that political security agents need to take action. We've seen that happen in polling units at broad daylight, and there are instances where people even fight over some of these issues. So what we're saying, first of all, is that this attitude should not be transferred to Ondo elections. Political parties and even citizens should be cautioned. Then, on the other part is that, yes, we've seen some distribution that are suggesting inducement. And we've also seen candidates, even citizens, demanding and requesting and waiting for some of these benefits, whether for the wrong reasons or for the right reasons. But when it comes to elections, there are what we call indicators of there are some indicators you also need to look at, and these are indicators we've seen, and we're seeing that we need to put an eye on them when it comes to elections. I'm not the one saying it. The political parties are already accusing themselves, both APC and PDP and other parties, specifically telling themselves, oh, you plan to buy votes on election day. I'm not the one saying it. So if they are already accusing themselves, and I've seen that in previous elections, what should we do? Is for us to ensure that the right agencies take the right step to protect the mandate of citizens and ensure that people vote for their conscience. I understand that the economic recession is also making people to make some kind of decisions that are for immediate benefit. But the question is, should we allow that to happen? Should we allow people to be taken advantage of? Because you're talking about selling hunger. If you deliberately make somebody to be hungry, you starve him, and by the time you come up with any offer, he takes it. So if people are not hungry, people will not also sell their votes for 5,000, for 2,000, for 1,000. But again, I personally, against the general belief of people, don't believe that poverty is the reason why people sell their votes, even though there's a popular understanding that poverty is one of the reasons why people in this client sell their votes. The US, we're talking about, there's recession, and this is the first time we're seeing this kind of actions in the US. Even though you know that there was a court ruling, I think 2 days to election, that said that, oh, there's nothing wrong with Elon Musk sharing money for people to vote. But but their jurisdiction is different. In Nigeria, we have limits for campaign finance, for spending on campaign. But in the US, they do not have that. They call it a free speech. But as far as our electoral law is concerned as of today, these are electoral offenses, and we must take them seriously.
Okay, let's also look at one of the reports INEC issued, and much in line with what my colleague Chijoke had asked in terms of voter apathy. INEC told us that 1.7 million voters were cleared for tomorrow's election, but raised concerns that over 295,000 PVCs remain uncollected. I don't know if Yiaga Africa has done any research on that or has come up with any reasons as to why as much as 295,000 PVCs plus are yet to be collected.
Yeah, I think in as much as we're encouraging citizens to go and collect their PVCs, I've done a research like 8 years ago, and it has shown that people do not collect their PVCs for different reasons. Some is that they've moved from the location. You know how our elections are. Some is that people are demised and for different reasons. And some is for reasons of multiple registration. People just feel like, oh, I've moved from Lagos to Abuja. Let me just register in Abuja, and they abandon the PVs. These are some reasons. But there's a new trend in our political systems that we also need to be careful with. High PVC collection rate is also an indicator that there could be election rigging, because that's what people are doing. We've seen that manifests in at different levels and taken advantage of by different political parties in even in Edo elections. So where you see 99% PVC collections, you should be asking questions: what led to this high rate? 99. You mean nobody died, nobody moved within the period of collections? What happened? And before you know it, you have high returns of votes on election day. So while we're encouraging people, because at the moment I think we had uh 86, if I'm not sure, I need to check, 86% collection rate across the state, which is a good collection rate as far as I'm concerned, because it's even beyond the pass mark. But we should also, while election observers like us, while we're encouraging high collection rate, we should start watching this over high collection rate. When you have a very, very high collection rate of the 99%, is something we need to we need to check.
Well, thank you for bringing us up on speed on that research. But before we come back to Honorable here, it's also some positives. I know that part of our conversations have been more on the negatives, more on the alarms that have been raised by political parties. But you're on ground there. Are there some positives that the Ondo electorates can take to heart to enable them come out tomorrow? Are there positives to note?
Yeah, there are many positives, and that's, first of all, the safety and security of citizens are guaranteed by the security agencies, and we've seen how they were proactive, even though we're encouraging them to be very proactive tomorrow in the pre-election environment, which shows that this voting environment will be safe and smooth. Then the second thing is that the technology INEC is bringing up. INEC said that they're going to upgrade their devices to ensure accreditation move faster. So I think on a personal note, that is an opportunity for voters to go take and exercise their franchise. INEC has also told us that other aspects of the electoral process on election day will work swiftly. The upload on the IRF and other aspect will work swiftly. So these are opportunities we need to take advantage of. And this is not because we believe that INEC will be committed to its cause or it will fail, but it's also an opportunity for us to take INEC into account, to hold INEC accountable.
All right, Safia BT, I'm afraid time is fast spent, and we just have to end the conversation here, but it has been quite engaging, and we thank you for finding the time to join us and all the wonderful works that you're doing at Yiaga Africa and over there at Ondo, in Ondo for the elections as well.
Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Well, Honorable, coming back to you, we have just a minute or two to let you out of the studio. You have listened to her. I just want to get your concluding comments in line with what she said and in line with all the topics that we've discussed today.
You know, if you go into fault finding as a basis for research, your mindset is already polluted and it will not give you the kind of output that you want. People come out to collect their voters card. You must distinguish between urban voters and rural voters. Where it is a rural area, the people are mostly indigenous. Movement and mobility is less. So you are bound to get that. In states like Ondo, Oyo, and other such places, they are more resident people, indigenous people, than non-indigenous people. So movement is likely to be less. Therefore, collection of PVCs will be very high. In any case, don't forget that those are the very highly educated and informed voting population because of their educational level. And two is that you should also not start demonizing and raising alarm about people not collecting. It should worry you more because there is a lot of political apathy about the relationship, the proportional relationship between voters and the dividends of democracy. So when people discover that their votes don't count, they are less likely to come out to vote. But where people believe that their votes count and whoever they are going to bring out is the person that will eventually emerge to bring them the benefits of democracy, they are bound to come out in the way that they do. So each climate and each local government and each state and each zone has its peculiarities and voting patterns. This is what you must also do. But I must commend Yiaga Africa for getting into these details that have never been studied before in our climate. Yiaga Africa is one of the few that have gone into these details and even go out of their way to educate the populace about even the Electoral Act. I want to commend them for that. But on a final note, let me say that Ondo is again going to put INEC on a higher pedestal because they've prepared for themselves for it, and commend our security agencies for constantly being on the march and being up to speed with every situation and circumstance in every election and every circumstance. We must commend our security, especially the police and the army. So I want the complementarity is also very high, unlike before where synergy was a problem. With that, I think more and more security issues are getting less and less into high tension levels. So I want to say that while we are winning Ondo tomorrow again, because we've always won there, I will expect that PDP, when they are discussing 2027, should do so with reservation, knowing very well that it can be very hypertensive, because we are going to give them a good Christian burial come 2027, so that they become an appendage of what used to be political parties in Nigeria.
Well, Honorable Cletus Obun, we must thank you with a pinch of humor there, ending his comments and projections going into tomorrow's elections. But we're not done just yet. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more numbers. 17 political parties, 18 local government areas, 1.